Hello and welcome to Odds Now. We are looking at the darts action for this podcast with no name. What was it called? Miss Doubles. That was it. Miss Doubles, episode number 4 with myself and Pieman. And the only place to start really is the European Championships over the weekend at Westfalen in Germany. And it would have been probably 1,000 to 1 or more that Jermaine Wattimena and Richie Edhouse would be the finalists this time a week ago. A few days of seismic upsets all over the shop. Short format, early doors, Gilding 6, Littler 4, Wattimena 6, Snakebite 0, Edhouse 10, Anderson 5, Wattimena 10, Humphreys 4. Just a few of the shock and crazy results we had over the weekend. Pieman, where do we even start with this tournament? I'm guessing with a maiden winner in Richie Edhouse.
Yeah, probably right. Although to be fair, you could start with Maiden Major finalist Jermaine Wattimena as well. You could start with Maiden Major semi-finalist Luke Woodhouse. Yeah, 3 of the 4 outsiders in the entire outright market making up the semi-finals. And Danny Noppert wasn't exactly well fancied, was he? He would have been a good 50 to 1 chance at best, I would say. So yeah, really just a bit of a freak occurrence. You do get this every now and then. This, I suppose, any tournament, any major, any big TV title that throws up a first to 6 legs format in the first round is opening itself up to upsets. And I think if you're going by the betting odds, 10 of the 16 favourites were knocked out in the first round, which immediately opens up the draw massively. But I think it's important to stress that these guys that made the final, they actually dumped out quality players over a longer format. So Jermaine Wattimena, a 10-9 victory over James Wade, who wired a 9-darter in that game, one of the most high-caliber matches we saw all weekend. He then beat Luke Humphreys 10-4 in the quarterfinals, which is probably a career best result, I would say, for Wattimena. Yes, Humphreys wasn't at his usual standards, but you still got to get the job done against Humphreys. As we all know, he's a very hard man to actually beat. So credits to Wattimena there. And then Richie Edhouse beat Gary Anderson 10-5. He beat Michael Smith 10-9. He beat Jean Van Veen 6-1, averaging 109. And then in the semis and the final, quite simply, he held himself together better than his opponents. He beat Luke Woodhouse 11-5. Woodhouse started really, really slowly. Looked like the occasion got to him a little bit. And same goes for Wattimena, who was all over the place in the first 10 legs of that final. And it was all over by then. Richie Edhouse's composure was just unbelievable all week. Performance of the week for me was his beating of Gary Anderson, who was averaging north of a ton, didn't play badly at all, and Edhouse just blew him away the same way that Anderson's been blowing people away all this season, really, on the floor. And I got to be honest, I woke up on the morning of the quarterfinals, I just looked at it and thought, yeah, I'll be watching Humphreys Anderson in the final about 9 o'clock tonight, and they were both gone by midway through the afternoon. So, yeah, crazy, crazy tournament. Delighted for Richie Edhouse, who is just a normal bloke, really. And I think that showed in his post-match media. He was like, couldn't have looked more uncomfortable, really. But yeah, fair play to him, because I remember being at Ali Pali, would have been 2 or 3 years ago, and he had a first round match with, I think it was Leonard Gates, and it was a dreadful match. And Ed House ended up losing it from 2 sets up. And yeah, he looked a player like shot at the end of his tether. Then I think he was in danger of losing his card and stuff. So it's been an unbelievable turnaround in his career, and it's not been a fluke, has it? Because we've seen what he's been doing on the floor. I think it was
Absolutely.
120 average a fortnight ago or something.
Yep. Yeah, I was going to
So
come on to that. We can maybe appear being clever after the event, but Matt and I spend a lot of time looking at the Pro Tour. I've just looked at my records. I backed Richie Edhouse to win a Pro Tour number 25 and 26, bearing in mind that Pro Tour 29 and 30 take place tomorrow and Wednesday. So yeah, I've backed him quite recently. So I've backed Edhouse twice. Quite recently. Wattimena, I've backed this year for Players' Championship 9, 16, 17, 27, and 28 at odds of around 200 to 1. So it's safe to say that this week, when the Players' Championship concludes, neither of those are going to be the prices that we were originally backing them at. But you can't back them all every time, can you? in
I must
danger
say,
of
I looked
poor.
at it. I looked at it and I thought, if this was a floor event, we'd be absolutely mopping up
Oh
here.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Looking at this semi-final lineup, it's
yeah.
like the Players' Championship semi-final lineup of dreams, isn't it?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah. If that was in Wigan, because Luke Woodhouse as well, we've backed as well quite
Yeah, I
recently.
know. That's what I was
If
going
that
to say.
tournament was in
Yeah, big on
Wigan, yeah, would have been on at least one of them. Yes, they did put in some crackers. That 103 average against Anderson, for example, and Watamino 100 against Humphreys. We talk about the occasion; they were both making a semi-finals for the first time. Never mind the final. So pouring a little bit of cold water on it. Can we take the form that seriously? Because a final where Richie Edhouse averaged 90 and Jermaine Watamina, unfortunately for him, averaged 84. Maybe both nervous, maybe a long day
I think
on the edge of winning their first biggie.
if you watch that final, Watamina was not at it at all. I think the day had caught up with him. Um, you got to play 3 long matches in one day. I don't think Watamina was up to it physically, if I'm being honest. I think he was very much just happy to make the final, which I do understand in one breath, but then I also think you're probably not going to make another one. So that is and you're playing Richie Edhouse, like it's a winnable final, isn't it? So that was all a bit strange to me. But yeah, Edhouse, that 93 average doesn't really do him justice. He absolutely battered Watamina in that final. Gave him absolutely no respite or no chance to settle into it. And yeah, it was purely the fact that some of the latter legs got a little bit sloppy from both players and dragged his average down. But I think we can take Richie Edhouse's forms literally. I thought there was no fluke about it. All of his matches he won comprehensively. Look at it. Look at the results. None of them were even remotely close. He's a really, really deserved winner. And yeah, interested to see how he goes again. Well, he'll probably be turned up at the Players' Championship, and yeah, that'll be interesting in itself. But like the TV events come thick and fast now, and I think we
Yeah.
saw with Mike De Decker on the Euro Tour and at European Championship, like he played well. He played well in both of those events. So he's definitely taken that confidence onwards. Hopefully, Edhouse can do the same now. And he might not be a fashionable player. He'd be a PDC's worst nightmare if they had to get him in the Premier League somehow because he just couldn't
Oh yeah.
fit that face any less, could he? But he's a brilliant player, and good luck to him.
Yep. Well, as always, after the weekend's action, we always take a look at if it had any impact on the World Championship outright betting. At the top of the market, the short answer is no. I've got players listed there up to 66 to 1. Richie Edhouse or Jermaine Watamina are not within that bracket yet. So, yeah, Luke Humphreys is still there as the strong favourite. Littler, second favourite. And I think unless Littler wins a Grand Slam or possibly a Players' Championship final between now and December, I think it's going to pretty much stay that way at the top of the market. Any comments?
It should, as I say every week, Luke Humphreys should be favourite for this World Championship. In the game he did lose to Watamina, he was complaining of a breeze on the stage affecting his throw, which is I'll give Luke Humphreys credit. He's not really one to make excuses. That's quite unusual for him. So maybe there was something in that. He definitely has a more floaty throw than Watamina, who gives him a good pummel into the board. So that might have been a possibility. However, I didn't see anything to put me off Humphreys. In fact, I grow more confident by the week that Luke Humphreys is a very worthy favourite for this World Championship. But these events continue to remind us that there is a lot of players now who can produce one-off clusters of world-class performances. And yeah, there's no it's not as cut and dry as the Taylor era. I think we all accept that. But I think if you were picking a favourite, it absolutely has to be Humphreys.
Yep. Moving on then. This week is like I say, the final 2 Players' Championship events of the season, 29 and 30. I believe in next year, 2025, there is 32 events, so 2 more added, coming thick and fast. So yeah, this is where basically the top 64 will qualify for the Players' Championship finals, which is in Minehead. Yeah, Pieman. So yeah, there's a few on the cliff, if you like, around that 64th spot. 64 ranked is actually Nathan Aspinall, so that would be quite a big name straight off the bat. If missing from the Players' Championship finals, some that need to go well this week that are just outside the top 64. Jose de Souza, we've seen him make a little bit of an uptick in form on the floor recently. Christian Kist has done okay at times. They're the type of players that need to pick up a few quid this week in Wigan if they want to make that top 64 and qualify for Minehead. Any comments on that one?
I think people will be surprised some of the names lurking at the bottom of these 64. But I think when you actually take it in context, think of these Players' Championship events. So often we see a lot of the bigger names just not turn up and not play their best stuff. And Nathan Aspinall's obviously missed quite a few events through injury last year, so there is a little bit of a reason there. But looking a little bit further up, I mean, you're probably going to be safe just because of the sheer number of players involved here. But Joe Cullen, we know he's had a dreadful year. He's only 59th. Rob Cross, 55th, which might surprise a few. Peter Wright, only 50th. Dimitri Vandenberg, who's consistently dreadful on the floor, 48th. I think he had one Players' Championship final or maybe won one, and that's literally on its own. He's going to drag him into this, or he'd be outside the qualifying spots. But yeah, I mean, I would like to see Steve Beaton get in just because he's very much on the cusp of missing the Worlds, and it's going to be his last World. So getting into the Players' Championship would give him a real boost in that race. And like you say, of the players, we're only talking £1,000 or £2,000 difference between. Yeah, so literally winning a couple of games on the floor is going to be the difference this week. If you were picking one out, I think you've already said him, Christian Kist. He is hot and cold, but when he's hot, he can go quarterfinals, semi-finals. I think he's been in the final this year as well. So he's a talented man, obviously a former BDO champion. He'd be one that I'll be watching this week for maybe a deep run on one of the days at a big price. But no, generally speaking, on the Players' Championships, I just want to say it while I have the chance. So Edhouse and Watamina have both come into the Grand Slam of darts, which I think we'll expand on in a little bit, as a result of being European Championship winner and runner-up. They've booted out, as a result, Chris Dobie and Damon Heta, who were both going to qualify, having both won multiple Pro Tour events this year. But that is the bottom of the qualifying criteria. So basically, when you have like unique major finalists, they get in over Pro Tour winners. I'm not sure how I feel about that. We've got a lot of players in this field qualifying because they were runner-up at a tournament, and you've got Heta and Dobie, who've both won 2 titles, albeit floor titles, who are going to have to go to this qualifier now, having last week been almost certainly qualified. So they must have been watching their Watamina and Edhouse with their head in their hands, because now they've got to go to this notoriously tricky qualifier, which tends to throw up some funny results. But yeah, that's nature of the beast, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of things I don't like with the Grand Slam. I know that we might touch on it later, but I know they've got to do different things with tournaments throughout the year, because we are in danger of just having top 32s, in slightly different formats throughout the year. So, the Grand Slam of darts has that league phase. It used to have BDO qualifiers. Now it has female qualifiers, for example, or Asian Tour qualifiers. So you can see the reasons why, but some of the criteria: World Cup of darts runners-up, World Series of Darts finalist. It's an invitational, the World Series of Darts. Runner-up qualifies for this. So, yeah, it's pretty questionable. But like you say, it also gives a nod to the variety of winners. I mean, just in the last couple of weeks, we've seen Mike Dedeker and Richie Edhouse, plus Watamina as well. It just shows, again, as we mentioned, and always do, the strength in depth that we've got in darts. And when there's that many players, we mention it all the time, particularly when we're previewing a big tournament, that are just below. They've got the talent. We know they've got the talent. We know they can do it on a given day, maybe on the Pro Tour. They just need to get over that line for the first time, and then they may well kick on. And that's what we've seen recently with Dedeker and Edhouse. The kick on part of that equation is yet to come from those. We'll see in the coming weeks. But yeah, just the strength in depth is pretty big at the moment.
It certainly is. I don't begrudge the Decker or Edhouse their spot. I actually like that qualifying criteria of winning you're in, but I don't like runner-up and you're in. It just doesn't sit right with me that Roby John Rodriguez, Mensur Suljovic, Jermaine Watamina are qualifying over the likes of Heta and Dobie, who have both won events. And like you can say it's just a Pro Tour, but you've got 128 players playing in that event. That's arguably even harder to win than some of these qualifying events, isn't it, really? Never mind be runner-up in these qualifying events. So I just would like them to have a look at that, really. I think winning multiple Pro Tours should assure you a spot there. I mean, look, if all is fair and all goes to form, Heta and Dobie will come through that qualifier, but we all know that is unlikely to happen because of the open draw, the short format, the sheer chaos of the day. We're probably going to get like a Mike Ivanhoven or type coming through to go in a group with Roby John Rodriguez and Noah Van Leuven. And it's just like, is it really a representation of a major? I don't know. Yeah, I'm sure they have this conversation every year, but I just think as the quality gets higher at the top, we expect to see highest quality players at these big events, and there's going to be a lot of high quality players missing next month. But it'll still be a class event.
Yep. So the qualifier for the final 8 spots for the Grand Slam is to be held on the first November the 1st, this Friday. So basically, say 64 players turn up for that. Effectively, whoever makes the quarterfinals, i.e., the final 8, will qualify. Yep. Yeah. It's similar to what happens on the Euro Tour qualifiers as well. Okay. This also today there was a bit of an announcement. I think the PDC had a pin tweet on Twitter, a little bit like they was getting onto the Oasis date kind of thing, a little bit. But it basically has announced the rebranded and expanded Masters tournament that usually takes place in January. Has changed a little bit over the years. It was 16 non-ranking only 3 or 4 years ago. Then it went to 24 players. Still non-ranking. Now it's going to 32 players and ranking, and it's got a new name as well, Pieman.
Yeah, it's the Windmill World Masters, which any sort of older generation darts fans will remember very fondly. This was one of the original events in darts' sort of pomp in the 80s and 90s, won by the likes of Eric Bristow, Dennis Priestley, Phil Taylor, before it was kind of binned and scrapped. The Masters that we know and love is a completely different tournament. As you say, introduced in 2013, it was a non-ranked event for the top 16 in the world, and it generally was, I suppose, the official kickoff of the new season, wasn't it, really? You have a couple of World Series events in January, but nothing major. And then you get this really high-quality affair over a few days in, Milton Keynes nowadays. However, it's been, as you say, completely rebranded. They've gone back to the original Windmill World Masters format, which means we have set play. So that's a nice little perk and sort of an extension of set play from the World Championship, which is good. And I do like the qualification criteria here. So it's the top 24 in the world, and there's 8 spots up for grabs. But rather than just a bog standard qualifier, it's also open, as well as being open to the other 2 card holders. It's open to the top 8 on last year's Challenge Tour, the top 8 on last year's Development Tour, and the top 4 in the JDC Tour, which is for kids, basically. So your next Luke Littlers, if you will, get the chance to turn up and qualify. So it's quite exciting from the prospect that we might see a name that we've never seen before turn up. And I wouldn't put it past some of the averages these kids are turning in now. I would not put it past some 14-year-old turning up and just averaging a ton. That's where darts is at the moment. And that'll be interesting to see. But yeah, it's going to be completely different to the Masters that we've got used to watching. And I think it will add a little bit of incentive for the top boys to want to win this. Obviously, it has a little bit of history in the game. And just generally, when something's happening for the first time, I think being the first name on a new trophy is always nice. And it'll be nice for darts because I think after the World Championship, there can be a big lull. And this should keep people sort of talking about something other than who's going to be in the Premier League for the weeks afterwards. So I'm certainly looking forward to it anyway. I think well done to the PDC. I don't agree with all the decisions they make, but this one looks a good one.
Yeah, and the Masters, as for the last couple of years, as kind of acted as a de facto final qualifying spot for the Premier League. We have this every year. It bores me to tears in terms of who's going to be in the Premier League, and it has an amazing record since it went to 24 players. There's been 4 years since it's been at 24 players, and each year it's been won by a player that played in the first round. So because of the nature of 24 players, the top 8 are in the second round, and the other 16 all compete in the first round. And over those 4 years, it's been won by a player who A, played in the first round, and B, had never won, had yet to win a TV major at that stage. I think Bunting, Dobie the year before. 2022 was Joe Cullen and Clayton. I think Clayton might have won a TV event at that stage, but that was the start of the year of the ferret. So it just had an amazing.
They actually got him in the Premier League, if you remember. He beat Mervyn King.
Yeah. So it got him in the Premier League and he won it. It got Dobie in the Premier League. It got Cullen in the Premier League. It's just crazy that a non-Premier League player hasn't won the Masters for 4 years. Mad.
Yeah. Surely, I was going to say surely it ends this year, but looking at the week we've just had, the week or two we've just had, you wouldn't rush to say that, would you? But it's it's a great tournament anyway. But I think just adding this extra, and I don't think I mentioned this as well. I probably didn't do this justice, but instead of qualifiers, they're labeling it like preliminary rounds, and that's all going to go on the Wednesday. I don't think they're selling tickets for the Wednesday, so I think it'll be just kind of like a bit of like a floor event basically on the Wednesday. presumably that we can follow on Darts Connect. I don't know. Will they give it coverage on TV, on ITV? I don't know. That's going to be interesting to see. But yeah, the introduction of set play, the high quality feel, it should be a great event, shouldn't it? It should be a really good watch.
Yep, absolutely. Right, that wraps it up for this week then, Pieman. Nice and concise in the 20 minutes, and we are in busy season for the darts. And of course, we'll be back with a full preview for the Grand Slam as and when the final fields and the groups are confirmed, and we'll have some odds to talk about as well. So make sure you're tuning in to Odds Now for all your sporting content. Thank you.